Hello, I'm Linda Seith from The Layered Onion. Thank you for joining us. We will be listening to our amazing creators talk about their art and mental health. 48 million artists all over the world share this lived experience. The Layered Onion was formed to create a supportive community, allowing the creators to focus on their art, bringing their work from the shadows to receive the recognition and opportunities they deserve. Each podcast will feature an artist who talks about their creations and mental wellness. Art is healing. We hope these discussions will inspire you to appreciate the stories behind the creations and, more importantly, inspire your inner creator. Together, we can tackle the stigma surrounding mental health.
Hi, Brittany. How are you?
I'm good, Linda. How are you?
Good. Well, Brittany, maybe you can introduce yourself to the audience and tell everyone where you're located.
Sure, and thanks for having me. So I am Brittany Josie. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm located up in the mountains of Colorado.
Great. So let me ask you, what is your art medium or mediums if you have more than one? Maybe you could tell us your different art forms.
Sure, happy to. I love it all. I am very inclusive when it comes to art. My medium of choice is writing by far. So while I really enjoy painting, I love mosaics, I love doing relief, I love using garbage to create art on canvas, but I always come back to writing and poetry specifically.
And what do you think drew you to poetry as kind of probably your main form? Because it sounds like you're doing a lot of other things.
Yes. I'm a true Gemini. I can't help myself. However, the writing is just, I find that it really sustains me and also gives me a lot of relief. And I think what I mean by that is one of the first things we learn as a little one is how to walk and how to talk. And words are so profound. Communication is everything with the human experience. And poetry goes back so far before even paper existed and the forms of communication that we know today existed. And poetry was used to tell a story and remember the details of that very important story from town to town to town as people were traveling, sharing that news. So for me, it goes back to generations of human advancement. And that is so beautiful to me, but it also, being one of the first skills we learn as a human, right? It feels very authentic to me to create like that. It's low pressure because I have a lot of words. I'm a total word nerd. I'm a bookworm. So for me, writing feels very empowering.
So when did you first start writing?
Well, I come from an artistic family, which I'm very grateful for. But my whole family generally gravitates toward music as their medium. And so as a child in my family, you get to quote unquote pick your first instrument. And I chose the flute. And as I learned that, I started to get into drama and musical theater and singing music. And then singing the music and learning music in different languages and how beautiful the words are formed in music, I found myself gravitating toward things like hip hop and rap. And that is all heavily influenced by poetry. And so I started writing my first poems probably in junior high and wrote all through high school as a petulant teenager with all of these big feelings and kind of lost my connection to poetry a little bit after I graduated high school and got busy with adulting. And then COVID-19 happened. And I had all this time in quarantine. and also all of this heaviness, right? Nobody expected to be caught in the middle of a pandemic like we were. And so poetry was brought back into my life, I think, as a lost art medium that I love, but also as an essential healing tool for that very difficult point in my life. And that is when I wrote my first book, was actually in quarantine.
So maybe you could tell me the name of your book.
Sure. My book is called Weatherveins, Poems for Every Season. And it's spelled anatomically. So it's Weatherveins, but Veins. And that is very symbolic because my book is all about relationships of all forms, shapes, types, familial, love connections. But it is broken down into seasons. So poems for every season, meaning it is 4 sections or chapters. And it starts with fall, which is pretty dark and gloomy. And then winter, which is bitter and cold. Spring is all about growth and renewal. And summer is my favorite because it is power and excellence and really stepping into that light. So that is my book.
What drew you to the idea of actually bringing a collection of your poetry together for a book?
Again, going back to quarantine, I think we all maybe were on social media more than maybe we were in the past. And I found myself in that place of, FaceTiming friends instead of meeting for happy hour, or catching up with old friends that, live in other countries now. And with that social media presence, I started actually sharing some of my poems on my personal Instagram page. And the reception of that work and the resonance of people that are close to me was pretty profound. And I was encouraged by my little community to pursue a book, and was given that external validation. I think as an artist, you always kind of fear presenting your work to the world because it's so emotional. And it comes from such a vulnerable, intimate place. And when I finally started getting courageous, pandemic and quarantine, you're like, well, what the hell? Who cares anymore? And so I just said, there's nothing to lose, started sharing it, and actually found not just that people relate to it, but that it was very healing for me to feel seen and validated in my own right. And then after that, I was encouraged by that community to actually author a book, which I did.
So what all goes into, so you make the decision, I'm going to publish this book. Did you have lots of poems and you had to think about which ones you were going to pull and pick? Or did you see a thread and a theme and that's what carried you that particular direction?
Great question. So my poems seem to all have a central theme of nature. And often I'm using nature to describe feelings, and or I'm personifying nature in a way. And so I think that was the common thread, which when I finally decided to write the book, it was, I'd say I had about 100 poems at that point that felt sound and felt authentic and intuitive. I write a lot of stuff that the world has never seen, a lot of stuff that the world will never see. But I had about half of the book by the time I made that decision. And then I needed to come up with the concept and the title. The title took me a long time. And I know that feeling, that intuitive feeling of, yes, this is it. This is the one. When I finally had the title, the concept formed itself almost, of the 4 seasons being fall, winter, spring, and summer. It just felt so natural to my writing style. And then I took about 4 or 5 months to intentionally write the rest of the book. And that that was a really fun but very challenging process, because the harder that you work at something that's so emotive, the harder you need to work to balance that. So I was seeing a therapist regularly. I hired a life coach, and I felt very grateful that I was in such an opportunity to be able to do that, right? That's a privilege that I was able to hire a life coach. I also changed my career dramatically. So the 9 to 5 I was working, I shifted from that industry into art. And that also helped inspire me by just spending most of my time in the art community. But going back to the book specifically, it was about half was already written. The other half was written specifically when the concept for the book came out. And from start to finish, it took me about 7 months.
Ah. So Weatherveins is the title, and you said that you purposely picked veins, not VANES, but veins like in hands or in leaves, etc. Maybe you could, since you said it took you a bit to come up with the title, what made this your aha moment? What made you know that this was the right title?
Yeah, there is a poem I specifically kept coming back to at that point in my life. And it's in the book, and it's very short, but it is in the summer chapter. And it says, "I would rather wander than head in the wrong direction." And that's very true for me. I would rather be curious than intentionally do something that I do not align with. And so the visual of a weather vane came to mind. I threw around the idea of a compass as well during my process. And the word weather vane kept coming back to me, but I knew it wasn't quite right. It wasn't as visceral as I was looking for, but it was close. And I remember I was just laying on the couch. I know that sounds so romantic, but I really was just laying on the couch in a moment of stillness, and I was not overthinking anything, and it just came to me. And I just knew in that moment that it was the title I had been waiting for.
So that's a great segue to the piece that I think is in your book, but was also featured in the Shallot. And that's called Morning Hike, because one of the things I was very struck by, and I'm going to have you read the poem to us, is, as you said, just taking the time on the couch or just being. I got some of that sense from your poem.
Yes, there's so much power in stillness.
Yes,
right?
Stillness. Thank you for the word. I was like calling it being, but stillness was really the word I was grasping for. So,
sure.
Would you like to read that poem for us?
Absolutely, I'd be honored. And you'll notice in the book there are no titles on any of the poems, which some people like, some people don't. The purpose for that is I find when I'm reading poetry, I tend to get sort of a preconceived notion if I read the title first. And so I left any titles off intentionally so the reader can kind of have their own experience. But like you said, for the Shallot, as it's published, it is called Morning Hike, but in the book, it is page 124 is how we affectionately refer to these. All right, so page 124. She rose early, eager to see the first light of day. She gathered herself and started the climb through the spring dew, breathing in growth. She met a mountain on her way. The mountain spoke to the girl and told her she was strong, an infinite being in a wide world of chaos. The girl whispered back, And she said, "You're wrong, mountain. You don't know me. I am weak and selfish, and I don't have much to offer this world." The mountain sighed and replied, "Maybe you should get to know yourself a little better." Thank you.
It's very nice.
Thank you.
Very nice. I think there's so many opportunities to think more. First, to just really be drawn into the process of the outdoors, the time of day, sort of the expanse. When you think of a mountain, the expanse, or the movement. And then when you're sort of on that journey, you take the next path of a discussion with the mountain. And then finally, really the idea of reflecting in. So maybe you could sort of tell us a little bit what you were hoping to leave with the reader, or what you were thinking as you wrote this piece.
Well, Linda, I hate to say, you said it best, right? I mean, it really fills my heart to hear somebody react to my work, because that is entirely what it's about. Artists create for themselves, right? It is a very healing process, but just to hear somebody else, especially someone that I care very much for, like you, Linda, to hear somebody react in that way and say, "I feel that, girl, I feel that," is really amazing. But truly, when I wrote this, it was selfish. I wrote it for me, but if I were to say what I want the writer to feel out of this, I want them to feel that freedom, that you absolutely should allow yourself that space and honor that part of you that maybe is diminishing your power unintentionally, accidentally, and maybe taking a hike and clearing your mind and giving yourself that space is really what you need. Because when I hike, it's often internal dialogue. I can't help myself. It's often me having a conversation with myself, and using the mountain to personify that process is because I do feel safe when I'm hiking. I feel safe in nature, and I feel inspired to heal when I'm in nature.
So it is really a personal story of how, sort of, when you're outside, it gives you the time to dig deep and really maybe go places that you wouldn't go when you're not outdoors, you're not in nature, you're in kind of either more the hubbub, or you see the dirty dish that maybe needs to get washed or whatever, right?
Ooh, yes, all of the above.
Yeah,
Agreed.
that makes you go, okay, I'm not going to take the time right then.
Right.
I'm a huge nature person as well, and that is where I really find my center is in nature. And I have this place where I hike, and I have been watching ever since the pandemic this same this basically fungus that's been growing on this particular log that's close to some water, and just watching it evolve. And I've been taking photographs from
I love that.
over time. And it just it's interesting to me because they're starting to really decay and just really lose their, I was thinking they were losing their beauty, but actually it's just such a different kind of beauty.
Yes.
Yeah. So, well, I just totally love this piece. And I think the idea of speaking to the outdoors, or speaking to the mountain in such a direct way was super meaningful.
Thank you so much. Well, that means everything to me, and And hearing you talk about nature, I mean, I think we all, no matter how buried or surface that feeling is, I think we all resonate with nature because we are nature. We just are.
Right. We're the same kind of, atoms and
Mm-hmm.
carbons and all of whatever, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, well, I would like to ask you a bit is how has poetry or your other forms of art really been important from a wellness perspective for you and a mental wellness?
Good question. I think I struggle in a way that is very relatable, and that is expressing my emotions effectively. And I say, going back to what I said, where the first, life skill we learn is talking. It doesn't mean that we're all experts at it. And I find it very difficult to express my feelings. Poetry allows me to do that. And it helps me frame those big feelings in such a way that I can have understanding for them rather than judgment for them. And that allows me a whole bunch of self-compassion versus judging myself for the feelings I have that I know are natural.
So this shallot was really about looking at activities or hobbies that, sort of can help us, and art can be so healing.
Mm-hmm.
What made you think, oh, I might submit my poem for that? How'd you find the shallot?
Oh, that's a great question. I found the shallot actually shortly after, I think right around 2021. I am actually at the Layered Onion. We connected over Instagram. So I have my poetry Instagram page, Brittany Josie Poetry, and was really searching for some mental health supportive services because good art, or I think just art in general, there is no good or bad art. Let me rephrase that. But art in general comes from big feelings. And that if it is, it's a lot. It's a lot. And so I was looking for communities and or outlets and or resources. And since a lot of us were going online for some of those things, that's where I went. And I knew artists specifically in my own experience tend to struggle with those bigger feelings and mental health supportive services. And so that's how I found the Layered Onion. It was just my own personal journey. But then I wanted to do more and really support in an alternative way. Maybe that's, submitting to the shallot. Maybe that's seeing if we can get my book on the shop to have access to other people. Maybe that's doing podcasts. But I just wanted any way to get, once I learned what the Layered Onion was, I wanted any excuse to be involved. And so when I saw the shallot submission, I said, I'm going to finally do that. I'm going to finally submit, and I'm going to, figure out which poem in this book. That was hard. Picking one poem was hard. But that was kind of how I found the Layered Onion and then ultimately submitted to the shallot.
Well, we feel so blessed to have so many wonderful folks like you as a part of our community. And I have learned so much. I've learned a lot about just go-to activities or things that folks do when they're maybe anxious or feeling a little out of sorts.
Yeah.
I know you've talked about nature. Is there anything else that's kind of a go-to for you when you're just need to be centered?
Ooh. I think it kind of falls in the same camp of nature, but animals. I love fostering animals. Just today, I was at a doctor's appointment, and afterwards, I thought, oh, I'm just going to treat myself. I'm just going to go to the shelter and volunteer for a little bit. And I just went over there and I petted cats for just a little bit. But animals are so pure, and they're so, just the energy is pretty magical, but leans into that nature category, I'd say.
Yeah. How do I have to tell you though, I would be really nervous to foster because I don't know that I could let go.
Mm-hmm. It's difficult. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it at all. Every single time I do it, a little piece of me goes with them, but they leave a little piece with you too. And if I wasn't able to adopt them on, I wouldn't have room to do it anymore, right? And
Right.
and they're going to the most beautiful homes, and a lot of them I still have communications with, which is lovely. But they're getting better homes than I can offer them. I have a full house already.
And what kind of animal? I know I saw a cat, but what kind of animals do you have?
Yes, I have a little orange tabby, Ruby. She's unique because apparently orange tabbies are primarily male, and I didn't know that before I got her. And then I have the cutest little beagle mix. He's 13. He sleeps a lot, and he's the love of my life. That's Jack.
Oh.
Yeah. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. Well, animals a big part here too.
Yes.
So yeah, mine is over behind me on the floor.
Dog or cat?
Dog.
What kind of dog?
He's part Bernese Mountain Dog and part poodle and big part anxiety.
Oh. I feel that. That's a big, beautiful mix, though.
Yeah, he fits right in our house.
Yeah, smart too, I bet.
Yeah, he has the mix for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would just love to ask you if you have any words of wisdom that you would want to share with other artists that have similar challenges with mental health or anything, actually.
Yes. Well, I think the first thing I learned from this process was to just go for it and to not second guess my intuition. And that can be so hard because your intuition is your inner dialogue, right? And that can often sound like the ego, which are two very different things. But just listening to your gut, and then in way of healing, there are so many people with so many varying degrees of baggage, but it's all heavy. And if you're able to have somebody help you unpack that baggage, meaning a therapist, a counselor, maybe even a life coach, whatever you're comfortable with, that has been a big tool for me. I understand, again, from past experience, that's not always an option for people. So finding organizations like the Layered Onion, shameless plug, and finding communities within your local community are very important things, because I think one thing I found with mental health challenges, it can feel very, very isolating. And you can often feel like you are alone. And it is the one time that I will not say that somebody is special. And the only reason I say that is because I want you to know that there are people that can relate to what you're feeling. They're probably not going to have exactly the same story as you, but they can certainly relate. And the beauty in knowing that is knowing that there are ways to heal. That because there is a community, that means that there is a community that has overcome some of these challenges, or they've learned to live alongside them. And there's a lot of power in numbers, I feel. And so finding that community will help you find your strength, to help you find your voice, and vocalizing those things, or writing a book of poetry like I did incredibly, incredibly healing. It's also scary. My very wise grandmother used to say, you have to look in the mirror before you fix your makeup. And looking in that mirror can be really, really scary and really challenging. And that's where I think supportive services can come in.
Well, thank you for sharing those words. They were lovely, and I think just would resonate with everybody. I like the idea of you might have to operate with your challenges being alongside you.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, thank you, Brittany. We're really excited you were joining us, and look forward to talking with you a lot more.
Thank you so much, Linda. It was a complete pleasure. Happy to do it. Definitely enjoyed it.
Thank you for joining us today. It is an honor to talk with these amazing creators. You can see and read the artist's work in The Shallot, our journal of mental health, art, and literature, or on our website, thelayeredonion.com. Thank you.